Welcome to Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and today I'm excited to have Scott Pepper with me. Scott, you and I first briefly met each other a couple of months ago. You were speaking at an event, and my son was actually there, and he's our producer. And he texted me during your talk and said, "You got to get this guy on your podcast." And people might recognize your accent from East Texas.
That's right. Yes, very far east. Yes, you have to cross a few bodies of water. Very far east.
Yeah. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're a business guy. You got a cool story.
Yeah.
And tell the audience a little bit about your story. I want to start there, and then we'll see where it goes.
So yes, as you rightly pointed out, I'm not from around here. I'm originally from the United Kingdom, where I spent most of my kind of childhood and teen years. And I worked on I started magic when I was 10 years old, and that's what I predominantly have done for most of my life. And I made it a career. And in my 20s, I started working on cruise ships, which brought me all around the world, but mostly brought me to America. We were docking out of Miami and Orlando a lot. And I really wanted to move here one day. So I put everything into moving here. And I'd kind of been here for, just over, nearly 10 years now. I landed in Orlando for a few months and then ended up in San Antonio, Texas. And only recently have I moved to Colorado. I've been very, very happy to be here in the United States. And that's kind of where it all began, is here.
So you're a 10-year-old kid, you're starting to play with magic. How did that turn into a career?
Yeah, so, actually, I was 9 years old, to be precise, because I needed I was a Cub Scout, and I needed an entertainment badge. And so I tried all these different things I had lying around the house. I didn't really put much work into it, I'll be honest with you. I would come in with some toys and say that was entertainment, and they wouldn't give me the badge because they said it was terrible. So eventually, my mum found this big box of magic tricks. It was a plastic top hat filled to the brim with magic, and it was from, a pound store in the UK. So I didn't even practice any of it. I just took it with me, pulled one out, looked at it, went, hey, look, this does this, and then this does this. And so officially I did a magic show at 9 years old, and they had to give me my badge because it was the closest I'd got to entertainment. So that was the first time. But then when I was on vacation, I should say holiday, if we're talking about the UK, when I was on holiday with my family, we were at something called a holiday park, which is where British people go to go on vacation. I can't help but say the American words now. It just mixed in. But it's a big plot of land with lots of caravans or trailers, but kind of nice trailers, right? And in the middle of this plot of land, there's a swimming pool and a disco and a nightclub and all this kind of stuff. So you pay for the week to go into these things and stay in these caravans with your family. And you get to know everyone, and you get to know the entertainment team, and you hang out every night. But one thing they offer is a talent competition. So this was a slow time of year. So there was 3 people in this talent competition: myself, a young man reading poetry with his sister, and a young man doing karate. And I took these magic tricks that I got from this box of magic, and a few that I'd learned from a magic book, and I put on some nice pants and a shirt. I went up there and did, it must have been 6 minutes, and I apparently was just about better than the poetry and the karate. So I won, and I got a prize, but I also won a whole week's vacation back to this resort or this holiday camp. So I went back, and this time I was up against 23 other contestants. I was still, 10 years old, just doing this, my second magic show. So I brought a mentor on board, a guy called Lenny, who was a magician locally. My dad used to run one of these holiday parks. He was a manager. So he used to hire this magician, Lenny, to come in and do magic shows. And Lenny kind of took me under his wing and started showing me how to do things. And the first thing I ever saw him do was make a balloon animal, make a balloon dog, and then put a balloon inside the balloon dog, which you guys saw in my talk here a few months ago. And Lenny gave me a few of my first magic effects: linking rings, pulling scarves out of a tube. And I took all this stuff to this finals where I'm up against 23 people. And I didn't think I stood a chance, and I ended up winning. And I beat these 23 other contestants. And I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something in this. So by winning that, I then won another 1 week vacation, but this time to their flagship resort where everyone from around the country would come in and compete against each other. So now I think there was maybe 50 different acts, and we're talking 12 years old and under. So these are some of these kids have obviously done this before. You know, their parents obviously knew how to get them through to the finals, and we had no idea. We were just having fun. Anyway, I ended up losing in my first heat. I didn't even get to the final show, unfortunately. I got beaten by a couple of jugglers who were very, very good. And I was like, all right, that was a fun run. So yeah, that was still at 10 years old. So I decided to keep doing the magic. And by 12, 13 years old, I was performing at children's birthday parties around the area. At 16, I got my first moped, and I'd pack all my magic stuff into a backpack and zip around town on my moped doing these magic shows. And then finally got my first main job in entertainments when I was 17 as part of a entertainments team where I was providing the entertainment for the week. Kind of like if you go on a cruise ship and you see the cruise staff organizing all the events. I was one of those guys, but on land. But they allowed me to do my magic show once a week for the guests. And it wasn't great, but it got me in front of audience members every single week, and the show got better and better and better until I finally, about 4 years later, decided that's what I'm going to do full time, and I took it out on the road.
Did you ever have friends or family go, when are you going to get a real job? Oh,
all the time. I mean, yeah, all the time, because magic definitely does not pay well at the beginning. For most of it, it's so I was always hard up, because every time I earned money, I'd spend it back on magic or whatever it would be. So I was always, sleeping on couches or the cheapest rent I could just to try and make ends meet. And people were like, well, why don't you just get a regular job? But I had a kind of a vision in my head how this was going to end up. And in my head, I was going to end up as David Copperfield in Las Vegas, right? Like every magician does at 15 or 16. But I just kept going with it. And actually, my mum and dad obviously were more worried than they were anything. They were just hoping that it would work out. And I said I did these kind of shows in the UK around these holiday parks for many, many years, but it wasn't until I got on cruise ships that kind of everything stepped up, and it kind of paid off for the 10 years of work towards that, because cruise ships are a great way of making a living doing magic.
And I'm sorry, when did you end up on the cruise ships? Ballpark?
I was about 24, 25 when I got my first ship. That was an interesting one. It was a company called P&O in England. I think they're under the Carnival Corporation, I believe. I'm not sure. But I went on and I did my show and everything went well. They invited me back for a 30-day cruise. It was an 11-day cruise. And they'd also booked me for a 30-day cruise. And the 11-day one, I took on a bigger show, a more production value. I had an assistant with me. I had all these big illusions, and it did not go well.
Oh, no.
Lack of rehearsal, I guess, lack of, experience. And they canceled. We got off the ship, luckily. They let us stay the rest of the cruise, but they canceled my 30-day cruise that was going next. So this was my cruise career, over already after 2 cruises. I was devastated. But luckily, I had another 6-month cruise booking booked in I think this was October. In January, I had a 6-month cruise booking, and they did not know about what happened on this other ship, 2 different companies. So I had a good 4 months to work on the act, and this is when I really started learning the power of asking for help. So I reached out to some of the best magicians I knew in the country, anyone that would help. And I started learning from them. It cost a lot of money and a lot of time. But when I got on that ship in January, the show was 10 times what it was. And I think the first show we did on that cruise was, I think they rate it on percentage, and we got a 94% out of 100 from the guests. And everyone was very, very happy, mostly me, obviously, for making it through. And that was when my cruise ship career really began, because that's when the show was at the quality that I could keep going back and not worry.
Part of what Nathan and I both enjoyed hearing your story last time was this tenacity and this kind of going for it. And like you started to touch on it a moment ago when you said you learned to start asking.
Yeah.
And unpack that a little bit more about how that played into your journey.
Yeah, sure. I guess when I see a goal, my vision narrows to the point of, well, this is the only way it can be done. And if this is what I need to do, then I'm going to have to do that. And I'm not saying when it narrows, it's only 1 or 2 things. It's sometimes the things that have to be done are so difficult, or they take a lot of time. But when I know that that's the only thing that I can do, then that's what I do. And that's what I start. So when I knew that, when I got kicked off that ship, essentially, I knew I had to get better. And I knew the knowledge I had wasn't going to get me any better because I'd already relied on that and it didn't work. So I had to bring in people who were far better than me to learn from them. And that's what I did for that particular one. And that it opened up a whole new world of magic to me because I learned about the other magicians that were out there that would help you. I learned about the props that you could buy from these experienced builders. Beforehand, I would have maybe 10 illusions in my show, and let's say each illusion cost me about $1,000, right? But these were cheaply made, like even knockoff illusions, right? And I didn't know any better. Then I realized with that $10,000, if you would buy one good illusion from an experienced builder, that one will take you further than those 10 bad ones. And that changed my show. So I was now showing up with props that would look just incredible. They lasted. And with magic, it has to be deceptive as well. If you've got a badly made prop, people are going to see how it's done. But with these new props I had, I think I ended up buying 3, and it cost me over $20,000. But now I had 3 amazing props that I could split up during the show, and it elevated everything to another level. So that was 6 months I spent on that ship, and I talked about this in the talk. The ship was great. It was Oceana Cruises. They were like a 5-star plus. They're beautiful ships. The only downside is there's no kids on board. And I say downside because I'm a family entertainer. I love entertaining families. And I loved it on board Oceana, but I missed entertaining families. So they offered me at the end of my 6 months another 6-month contract. And it was a lot of money for me back then. And I turned it down because in my head, I was still wanting to go towards more ships that did family entertainment. And like I said, I was left with this kind of narrow vision of, well, if I take this other 6 months, that completely means I can't go towards the other ships that do family entertainment. So I knew it was a big risk to say no, but I knew it was the only way to get where I needed to go. So I said no, and said my mum was a little bit worried about that. She couldn't believe I turned down this huge contract. But about 3 months later from then, I had the next 3 months, I just pushed and pushed and pushed for family entertainment cruises. And when I say push, I mean, I have an agent that would book me on these ships. But what I did was I refilmed my show. I redid my promo material. I did everything so it looked more family friendly for these kind of ships. And I just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And 3 months later, I got my first gig on board Royal Caribbean Cruises, which was a lot more mixed for adults and kids and families. And I absolutely loved it on board. Really had a great time. And that was then my stepping stone to the one I really talk about in the chat, and that was Disney Cruise Lines. So when I was working for Royal Caribbean, I knew that Disney Cruise Line existed. They only had 2 ships at the time, but I knew that was going to be my goal. I had to get on Disney Cruise Line because this is going to be my absolute perfect audience. And from growing up with Disney World as a kid, like I knew not only did I want to work for them for the audience, I wanted to work with them just because I absolutely adore Disney. So the story went like, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, as you're transitioning into the story, I've got a good friend that it took him, just so the audience has a clue, for the creatives, Disney's not an easy place to get into. My friend applied every year for 7 years in a row before they finally let him in. He was a cartoonist. He ultimately got to do some really cool stuff, but it's not like you can just show up and put on a, put on a Pluto outfit and go be a mascot. Like there's a lot of people vying for those spots.
Yeah, it's a very popular company for obvious reasons, and for me in the cruise industry, it was having only 2 ships and a limited amount of entertainers. I knew I guess I knew and I didn't know. I didn't think about the limitations in that way. I just knew that I had to get on there somehow, and I wasn't getting a no from anyone saying that no, my act wasn't good enough. So that was like a green light to me. I was like, well, I can do this. That's great. The no I was getting was that because I lived in the UK, they wouldn't fly me all the way over to do a ship and then fly me back. And that was fair. I understood that. So again, I was left with very few options. And I knew I had to do on the chance that they would book me on my act, but not because I was in the UK. I did the only thing I could do. I packed up my apartment, put it all in storage, sold my motorcycle, bought a one-way ticket to Orlando. And sorry, no, that was the lie. Not a one-way ticket. They wouldn't let me buy a one-way ticket. I had to have a return ticket, but it was 3 months later, which was the maximum time I was allowed to stay in the States, which was 90 days. So I figured, hey, I'll fly over there. If I'm there, they can book me. Fine. So yeah, I arrived in Orlando and I went through the, actually Disney have their own kind of Craigslist. And I went through and found a guy that was renting a room. So I literally, had this tiny little room. I bought an inflatable mattress, pay-as-you-go cell phone. I have my 2 suitcases with me and that's all I had. I was like, all right, day one, calling Disney saying, hey, I'm here. Can you book me? And it wasn't that easy. Unfortunately, they don't answer the phone. So I called my agent. I was like, hey, look, I'm here. Can Disney book me? They're like, it's not that easy. I was like, okay, well, I got to make it this easy because I only have 90 days. So while I was waiting and figuring out what to do with Disney, I called every other cruise company I could and was like, hey, would you book my show? Would you book my show? And if they said no, I would find out why. And most of the time it's because they didn't want the big illusion act, which is what I was offering. And if it was a yes, I would get some cruises on the books. And actually within those 90 days, I ended up working a little bit for Royal Caribbean and Celebrity Cruises, which was good. That kept the money coming in for the time being. But Disney was my main goal. And I wasn't getting emails back from them. My agent wasn't doing anything more. They weren't able to push me any further. So I was like, I'm running out of time here. I got to do something. So about 60 to 70 days in, I think it was, I went to Best Buy. I bought it was called a Motorola Zoom back then, which was the tablet you could buy, and I went home, loaded my promo video onto it, 2-minute promo video, and I had Googled where the Disney Cruise Line head office was, and I was willing to drive wherever, but luckily it was 25 minutes down the road. So I jumped in the car, put on a shirt, and arrived at the Disney Cruise Line office. It was amazing just walking in and seeing Mickey Mouse on all the walls. And I was like, I'd never been in there before. It was incredible. And the receptionist wasn't going to let me past. So I had to put on some of the British charm and appeal to her sensitive side. I said, look, I've flown all the way from England. I want 2 minutes with someone to show them this small video. It's been a 9-hour trip. They didn't know that I'd come 70 days prior. Eventually, she let me up in the elevator, and I was able to meet the head of Disney Cruise Line booking talent, and I showed them my video. And 2 weeks later, they found a cancellation, and they booked me on my first cruise for the Disney Wonder cruise ship. It was just before Christmas, and I remember the most amazing part of that was my first show was the Welcome Aboard show. So I'd go on and I was backstage with Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Goofy, Pluto, all of those people. I mean, yeah, it was them. It wasn't, it was literally, and you had to address them as such. It was, I couldn't believe it. And then it was my turn. I went on, I did my 15 minutes and everything went well. And I remember coming off and the cruise director giving me the thumbs up. And that was just like the defining moment. I was like, yes, this has worked. And then funny, I got a little bit of the wind taken out my sails when I got back, because they said, look, they loved you, but they booked so far ahead of time that they're not going to be able to book you for another 13 months. I was like, fine. I'll take it. But what that gave me was 13 months to produce a show that I would pitch to them, to not so I could just go on for a week, so I could go on for 6 months. And I managed to negotiate this contract with them where I would essentially do all the Disney training. So they flew me to Disneyland to do all the training with everyone else. Then they'd fly me to the ship. And I was the first illusionist, I think, to be on there for that amount of time. I was almost like a crew member as well as a guest. It was an amazing experience. And for those 6 months, I performed this show that I had created in my head years ago and now could afford to put together. And it was just the most amazing experience. So there was a lot of magicians at the time when I got that gig that were better than me and could have easily done that gig. But I don't think anyone was as willing to do what I did, or they didn't think they could do what I did. So just by going that extra mile, or extra 4,500 miles as it was.
9-hour flight.
Yeah, it totally paid off. And I've kind of kept that same attitude ever since.
It kind of flew by there as you were sharing your story. I did the math. you were a few days away from your 90 days being up.
Yes, I was. And I did the Disney ship. I did one more Royal Caribbean ship, and I had to get off that ship and fly straight home. Because one thing I didn't want to do, again, looking into the future, I wanted to move to the States one day. And if you get one black mark on your record like that, it can ruin everything. So I was back in England before those 90 days for sure. Wow. And that's when it really was a time crunch, because you really don't want to overstay your welcome here in the US.
So did you ever have any doubt when you're sitting there that 10 days into the Miami or into Orlando, 20 days into or 30 days, like, yes. What'd you wrestle with?
I'm not, I know positive thinking is a fun thing to do, but yeah, of course I think of what if it doesn't work, you know, but at the same time, I have to kind of think to myself, well, this is all I can be doing right now. Mm-hmm. So if that doesn't work, then great. That's fine. I'll fly home. If it wouldn't have worked out, I would have flown home. I would have put together a new plan, and I would have tried again somehow. Luckily, it just happened to work on the first-ish try, right? So no, I never it always crossed my mind that it could not work, right? Mm-hmm, and some things I've done have not worked like that. So I'm not. I guess I don't.
So the reality check was there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I knew what the stakes were, but I just knew what I had to do to make it happen. So it's, I think that keeps you motivated as well in that sense when you know what could go wrong.
Well, one of the definitions of success when opportunity and preparedness meet, right?
Absolutely. And when that happens, it feels like it's just meant to happen. But you have to remember there's a bunch of times where it hasn't happened like that. And that's where, you've been as prepared as you could be, but just opportunity has never been there.
Did you ever think about quitting?
Only once. That was when I was, before all this, actually. I was living in a small town in the UK, Eastbourne. Loved the town. It was a little seaside town. And I was working a job. I was doing the shows around the country every now and then. I was working in a theater in Eastbourne, and they'd booked us for a 4-night. It was like a 4-night run every week, and it was a theater that was built. I can't remember. It's a very old theater. Houdini had played there. It was that old. It was an amazing place called the Hippodrome Theater in Eastbourne. So when I got offered the job, I was performing with a friend of mine, Oliver, who was a magician, and we both jumped at the opportunity because it would be just a great stage to perform on, audiences every night. It's something you can say no to, but the pay was terrible. I mean, to the point where we nearly had to say no, but we both went, all right, we'll figure it out. So I rented a room in an apartment in Eastbourne where 4 other rooms were being rented out. So I was on the downstairs and there was 3 upstairs, I think. And so it was a mishmash of people. We all shared a kitchen. It was not ideal, but it was kind of fun at the same time. My rent was the equivalent of about $75 a week. And I remember one week I'd done my show at the theater. I also had a job driving trucks. I was delivering laundry around the area. So I would get up at 3 a.m, do my van job, deliver the laundry, come back at 3 p.m, sleep for 2 hours, go to the theater at 5, do my show, get out, and then do it all over again. And I was working my tail off. And I remember I couldn't afford the $75 that week for rent. And I remember laying down on my bed and just like breaking down, like crying. I was just like so frustrated. I was trying to do something I loved, but couldn't afford to. And it was honestly in that moment, I gave myself 2 options. I said, I either quit now, no hard feelings, go get a full-time job, give this magic stuff up. It hasn't paid off. This is, I guess, 24, 25 years old. No one would think any less of you. Just go get a job. You'll be fine. Money won't be an issue. Or keep going, but know that I could never quit again. Like I would never give myself that option unless it was a sensible reason to.
Sure, yeah. I
wouldn't give up, essentially. So that's what I did. From that moment, I was like, all right, from this moment on, there's no quitting. And I think from that moment on, I started making bigger goals than I had before, and that helped to push me towards the cruise ships. I think it was a couple of days later, I wrote myself a check for £50,000 and I stuck it on my wall and was like, that's what I'm going for. Because at the time I was earning barely anything. And I was like, that's what I'm going for, 50,000. And within, I think, 4 months, I had that offer for that 6-month cruise. And that 6-month cruise was just over 50,000 for the whole contract. And It was like, ding, ding, ding. So yeah, it was a good moment to have that breakdown.
You're 100 days away from not having any of this story.
Yeah, yeah, essentially.
If you'd quit that day, the rest of the story you've shared and everything you've accomplished since would all be gone.
I don't know what my story would have been.
Probably would have been cool, but this is a cooler version.
This every time. The problem was every time I made a goal, then I had to succeed or at least finish it through. Mm-hmm. So I had to. There came actually a time where I had to stop making goals because I kept adding to my list.
But I think whether a person's a magician or they're a doctor or they're anybody that rises through the ranks to the top of their field or whatever, there is a level of tenacity. There is a level of not wanting to quit, right? And so your story revolves around magic, which I'd love to unpack that a little bit more here in a minute. But just from all the success stories I've heard over the years, there's an opportunity for somebody to quit. There's that dark day. There's that period of time where, the consecutive no's, right? And what am I made of? And am I going to persist or am I going to go do something different? And sometimes there's course corrections. Life throws us and it still turns out really cool or maybe even better than it would have.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know. It feels like sometimes people quit too soon. And that's one of the things I love about your story is, you could have quit on the 60th day. Like, hey, I've only got 30 days left. Might as well be sensible about this.
Right.
Why am I still in the U.S.? Nobody's taking my calls. They're not returning my emails, and yet, or I can go to Best Buy and get a tablet with cash I don't really have and try something different.
And that was always mainly the problem in most of these stories is cash, right? Mm-hmm. It's normally running out of cash before you hit your goal, or maybe it's with magic it was different. I think one of the biggest things was when I went from that moment on the bed of not having any money to looking at cruise ships. It was what I was focusing on. So I didn't know that cruise ships were an industry back then. But then when I found out when I started looking at, I need to make more money. And when I said more, I was like, I can't just be jumping up 5, 10, whatever, 1,000 it has to be, let's go big or go home. And when I set my goals to that, it's amazing what this whole other world opened up to me of like, oh, there are magicians out there that make way more than that. It's like, wow. And before that, I just assumed that every magician was struggling like I was, but then realized there was this whole world out there that when you get better and better and better, it actually pays off. So, and that's happened every time. Every time I've met someone on a different level, it opened up to me now to know that level is available to me. And if I want to work hard to get to there, I can. And that's the great thing about the magic world. There is so much out there that you can do other than just performing.
It seems like a lot of people have, I don't know what the right word is, but they're hesitant to go ask for help, right? Or they get to a certain level in their craft or their skill, and then they feel like, if I were to ask for more, then it shows maybe I'm not as good.
Yeah, that's a great point. The most successful people I know are the ones that doesn't matter what level they get to, they're still asking people below them for help, which I think is a super smart idea. Above and below, sorry. But yeah, I think I got to a level, at some point where I think there's a too big for your boots level, which I think I hit once. And then I got humbled very quickly. And now from that moment on, I would ask help from anyone that would be willing to pass it on. And, you can't take everything they say, but like a lot of the times I get some great information. Just the local magic club that I'm a part of in San Antonio, it's people that are maybe not doing it professionally. They're just kind of do it as a hobby. But every time I get a new idea for a trick, I'll show them and I'll listen to their feedback. And 9 times out of 10, it's improved the actual trick I was working on or whatever. I absolutely the best thing I ever learned was to ask people for help. And because people are so scared of that no. And I barely get no's. Or I get people don't respond, which is fine. But I've never really had anyone say, no, I don't want to help you. They're like, sure, what can I do for you? Or, just recently, so leading up to the talk that I did here, that was my first live talk and I took it very seriously. So I contacted a friend in the US, lives in Florida, a Brit actually, guy named Steve. And Steve has been a public speaker for many, many years and he's fantastic at it and makes a great living. And I just messaged him and said, hey, see if any chance I could run some ideas past you. And he called me up and we spent an hour and a half on the phone talking about stuff, and it's so nice that people like that that are already so well respected in that industry will lend their time for someone like me who just wants to try and get into it. So
who's the most famous person you met?
So it was probably when I did, famous in the magic industry, right? I've had some fun. So I performed at a place called the Magic Castle in Hollywood, which is the most famous magic venue probably in the world. And celebrities come and go through those doors every single night. I've performed there 3 times. That's 3 weeks, 1 week in a row every single time. And I didn't see one famous person every week. And then as soon as I leave,
they're like, oh, Scott's headlining. Never mind.
Sure, right? Yeah, maybe it's just me. But like the week after, a friend would be like, hey, Nicolas Cage is in the audience. Or, I've got Dick Van Dyke in the audience. And I never saw anyone there. But the best experience I did have was when I performed on Masters of Illusion, which is a TV show on the CW network. And I got to perform with some of my heroes of magic. I got to perform with a guy named Jonathan Pendragon. He was a part of a group called the Pendragons. And I think I'm allowed to say this. I think it's not public knowledge. He has a twin brother that he used to use in his act. And apparently he was one of the inspirations for the movie The Prestige. If you ever seen that with Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, it's a Christopher Nolan movie. It's about magicians and a twin. If you haven't seen the movie, I hope this isn't a spoiler alert. But like, it's a fantastic movie. But this guy was not only a massive name in magic. He was also had these cool stories, and I just sat and listened and took it all in. So that was one of my favorite experiences, was being on that show.
How long were you on that show?
It was like one day filming, and I was on 3 different episodes.
Okay.
It was really, really cool. I think I was on season 4. So if you look up Scott Pepper Masters of Illusion, you can see what I did on that show.
I think I watched most of those shows. Maybe not when they first aired, but at some point.
Well, it used to be a one called World's Greatest Magic, which I watched as a kid, and there was some people from World's Greatest Magic that were on my episode of Masters of Illusion.
Awesome.
And since then, I got to know some of these guys on a personal basis now, and it was amazing. But no, when it comes to famous people, they barely register. I don't think I've met anyone super famous, unfortunately.
Why do you think, like, what's the magic behind magic? Why are people so fascinated by what you do?
Well, it's weird. They are. It is such a strange thing because magic evolves as well as an entertainment art, but the amount of people. So my theater in San Antonio, we ran that. I had that open for 6 years, and we would ask everyone that came through the door, "Hey, is this your first magic show?" And 90 to 95% of people would say, "Yes, this is my first magic show."
Really?
Yeah, which was really. I mean, they watch a lot of stuff on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that, but it's definitely not the same. When you see something done live, it's completely different to on the video. So I think a lot of people just they've never seen it live. So anything a magician does now is going to be like, wow, if done well. There are people, I think, that also like to see magic evolve. So they don't like to see the classic style. They like to see the kind of people that are pushing it forward. People like David Blaine, who really pushed magic forward. David Copperfield back in the day really pushed magic forward. And I'm glad we got people like that, because they create this whole new world of magic for people to enjoy in the future. Like for me, like I was so, like, I wanted to be David Copperfield. I loved what he did, and the way he included music and choreography and everything in his magic. And he created a whole new generation of magicians like myself who changed our style to be less tuxedo and top hat and tails and more jeans and t-shirt. And, Copperfield was obviously very much adored by the ladies, and like he had that kind of persona on stage. And then you get David Blaine, who comes in literally in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and nothing else. And that's his props are in his pocket. And he created a whole nother generation of magicians who just now do card tricks and coin tricks. And there's no silk handkerchiefs or bunny rabbits. It's all everyday objects, So yeah, I think there's people out there that really keep pushing this art form forward. But at the same time, I think there's people that still appreciate just they want to recognize that it's a magic show. So
what do you think the magnetism is, though? Why do people just drawn to a magic show?
So there's certain people go there because they want to be challenged. They want to figure it out, right? Hopefully there's a bunch of people that know it's an entertainment form and they just go to be entertained like you would a comedian, a singer, anything like that. And I think other people just want to be mystified. I know I do. I go to a magic show because I want to be blown away, and most of the time I am. I am such a great audience member to the point where
I was going to ask you that earlier.
Yeah, no, I'm great. Magicians get me up on stage all the time, and I don't know why, but like I love being part of a magician's act because I will play the volunteer the whole time because I am genuinely having fun because I love to see magic done well. And I got picked out at a show in Vegas recently, just a smaller show, but had so much fun with that. And, afterwards he found out we were all magicians and he was like, oh, thanks so much for playing along. I was like, I wasn't playing along. I was having fun, like I was really having a good time. So
now you just need David Copperfield to call you out of the audience and then life is...
I went to see his show and my girlfriend at the time was sat next to me and he picked the lady on my left, not my right. If he would have been the one on my right, it would have been my partner. But he was right there next to us watching it. But he involves a lot of people in the show and I've never been part of it. But maybe one day.
Maybe he'll see this podcast and he'll feel like
that must be it. Actually, I did have... You say me, I had interactions with David Copperfield. He runs a nonprofit called Project Magic, where we teach children with disabilities magic using, so there's certain things if they have disabilities with their muscles or anything, we teach them ways of using their muscles. There's tricks where they can use their brain and their memory and things like that. Mm-hmm. So there's we used to be brought in maybe once or twice a year to go to different areas and teach kids how to do this magic stuff. And at the end of it, David would come up on a TV and we'd on a live Zoom chat and we got to chat with him.
Nice.
And it was really cool. He's just sitting there in his hoodie and, kind of thanking us. And he asked us our names. And at one point he said he'd heard of me.
Oh, nice.
I bet he says that to everyone. But it was nice at the time. He was like, oh, I think I read your name recently. Were you in that magazine? I was like, I was, yes. Yeah. So I guess that was my interaction with David Copperfield, and he seemed very
Zoom
nice.
Recording, hit play every once in a while.
Sorry?
Keep that Zoom recording, hit play every once in a while.
Yeah.
I've heard of you, Scott Pepper. I've heard of you, Scott Pepper.
Yeah, just on repeat as I go to sleep. He seemed very, very cool. So it was really, really great to meet him. But I've been really lucky that since when I opened my theater in San Antonio, so I should really kind of mention that. So, when I came off cruise ships in 2015, actually, let's go back a little bit more to the visa situation that I talked about. So while I was on the cruise ships, on Disney cruise ships, I was having so much fun. I was on there for about 7 years, and I kept porting in America, like I said, and I started dating people in America, and I had more friends in America. My brother became a citizen in America. I'm like, I really want to move here. I'm loving docking here all the time, but I want to move here. How do I do this? A friend of mine was a juggler on the Disney ships, and he said, well, look, I applied for this visa called an O1 visa, and it allows me to perform in the US. I was like, that sounds cool. And he gave me his lawyer's information. I contacted the lawyer, and she sent me the paperwork that needed to be done to get this visa. And it was, I forget how many pages. It was a lot of pages, and it was, you're looking at about 5 years of work to go into this thing, maybe. It depends how quickly you could tick these boxes. But the boxes were achievements that you had to do in magic. So they were awards to be won, publications that you've been publicized in, records you hold, products you've released, lectures you've performed, stuff like that. And I hadn't done any of that. I'd just been a performer. So I looked at all this and was like, immediately overwhelmed by it. I was like, this may not happen. But I said, okay, I need this to happen. Again, narrow vision. This is the only way to do it unless I got convinced someone to marry me. So let's do it this way. So I started with box 1, which was set a world record. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I'm a licensed skydiver, and I was like, okay, well, let's put these together. I would jump out of a plane, and I'll do a bunch of magic tricks, the most magic tricks done while skydiving. And I sent that to the world record, Guinness World Records, and they said no, it was too, I think it was too vague, I think. I don't know why. It was a really weird, letter of disapproval. I don't know why they said no, but they said I couldn't do it, which was because I'd actually already filmed it. I jumped out of a plane. I was only able to do one trick at the time, and it was making a silk handkerchief vanish in my hand and make it and then reappear. And you can actually, again, Scott Pepper skydiving magic on YouTube. You can watch it because they wouldn't let me take anything else. out of this plane, because if I dropped it, it's going to land on someone. So I took this handkerchief and I made the handkerchief vanish. And 120 mile an hour going down, it's really hard to hold on to that handkerchief. So anyway, I did that. And anyway, they said no anyway. So I gave up on that idea. And I couldn't think of anything at the time. So I moved on to the next one, which was like perform at a magic convention or headline a magic convention. And so I then, going back to the asking for help, I emailed any magician I knew that had worked a convention or was performing at a convention or anything. And they all put me in touch with the right people. So I put all my promo material out there. And eventually a couple of conventions came back to me and said, hey, we'd love to have you here. It pays X amount. And X amount was not a lot. But I said yes. Yes to everything.
The box, right?
It ticked the box, yes. It was costing me probably $1,000 per box at the minute, right? But I was like, sure, do it. I'll get these booked in. The other thing, another magician very kindly publicized me in a magic magazine that helped me get some traction there. And then I luckily I'd won a small award when I was maybe 25. That went in there. And then, but the biggest thing was the conventions, and I started lecturing as well, doing lectures for magicians. So I put all this stuff together. Oh, that was the other thing. You had to prove that you had work for the time you were in the States, which was 3 years. So mostly I don't get booked 6 months ahead of time, but you had to show them you had 3 years worth of work to go to. So I contacted every magic show, theater, or anything that hired magicians, said, hey, would you book me in the future? They say yes. Say, what date would you like? And they put a date on there and signed it. I said, thank you so much. So I maybe had 12 or 15 of these things. So anyway, this all took about, I think, 3 to 4 years of getting all this stuff together. And then it was 2015. I remember I had everything together. My lawyer approved it. They approved it, the customs. And when I got off the ship in 2015 in Orlando, I flew to Canada and I had my face-to-face meeting and I picked up my O1 visa. So 2015, I picked up the O1 visa and flew back down to Miami. And then I think 2 days later, I drove up to Pennsylvania for my first convention show, which I said cost me about over $1,000 in fuel and everything else to do. But I was so happy to have that visa in hand. And like I said, that came back to the 2 rules of, like, number 1, ask for help, and I wouldn't have done it without everyone that helped me. And secondly was just when you're facing something with so many steps, and is just to take the first one and see how that goes, and then go to the next one and go to the next one and try to break it down.
Did you ever circle back to the world record?
No. Funny, I didn't, but I did do some more magic skydiving. I've talked about, gone more into the idea of the skydiving magic, but I'm very inconsistent with my skydiving. And now I've moved to Colorado. There's a skydiving place just 2 miles down the road. Wow. And I'm starting to do it a lot more. And we're talking about doing some magic again. But I just found out about a month ago that someone had broken a record doing skydiving and magic. Where it was like, I put in for this. They don't understand.
Hey.
So now I got to beat him. So I'm very up for doing it. But if you ever want a real treat, just if you Google Robert Gallup skydiving escape, it's the most insane. I could never beat it. He gets put in a sack. The sack gets tied up. The sack goes in a cage, and on the outside of the cage is a parachute. They kick the cage out the airplane, and he has to get out the sack within the cage, then unlock the cage from. He then has to unlock the cage from the inside, get on the outside of the cage, put the parachute on, clear the cage, and jump down and land safely.
Wow.
And I don't care if they did 20 takes of this thing. It is incredibly scary to watch. And there's no way you can fake it. Like, he was really, it doesn't matter if all those locks were already open, still trying to get out all of that stuff in the 60 seconds you have before you hit the ground. Anyway, so I'm never going to beat that. But sorry, I'm digressing. I do this.
No, that's cool. But we can be watching for Scott Pepper beating the world magic record.
I think it's a goal to go to. Oh God, I better not make it a goal because then I have to do it. No, look at it.
Right here, it's happening on the podcast.
I think I would like to do it, and now I'm getting more confident in my skydiving again. I think this is something I could do, and I've had a few people reach out and said, "Hey, if you do it, I'll video it for you." I was like, all right,
nice.
Let's see if we can do this. But yeah, so the O1 visa was something huge for me. It allowed me to not live on cruise ships. And I said I moved to Orlando for 6 months and then realized I didn't want to go up against Mickey Mouse anymore. And I chose San Antonio as a place to live. And within the first I don't know, a few weeks of moving here, I secured a deal at a local theatre, the Magic Theatre. It's a children's theatre. Funny enough, called the Magic Theatre, and they didn't do any magic. So I said, how about I open a magic
How about
show?
we help you with the name?
Yeah. So they were doing afternoon shows. I said, let me do a 7:00 show. They said, fine. And we did a 4-week stint of the show. And then the year after, I booked a 9-week stint of the show to see if I could extend it, and it worked. And then the year after that, I decided it's about time I find my own venue. And in 2017, I joined with a hot dog restaurant called Frank's in King William District, San Antonio. It's in the beautiful Francis Church, I think it's called. And it had this beautiful stage and stained glass windows everywhere. It's amazing. Great venue for a magic show. And we did that for 6 months. And that's where my business really started. And after the 6 months, I decided not to re-sign with them. And a few months later, unfortunately, they went out of business. Not due to us not being there. I think they were heading that way, unfortunately. And then in 2018, I finally found a venue that was untouched, empty. It was just a big ballroom that had nothing in there apart from a fireplace and a bar. And I went in, I built a stage, we put curtains up, and in June 15th, 2018, I opened my first show at the Magicians Agency Theatre in San Antonio. And that was 6 years after that. We've been still running.
Wow. And now you're doing the similar thing in Colorado, right?
No, actually, I'm not really. I'm actually taking a break from it. So we've closed the San Antonio location for the time being. We're looking at opening again 2025. But in Colorado, I'm really not doing that. Actually, I'm making sure I don't do that. I'm trying to keep an emptier schedule so I can look at other things, actually. But we did just finish a run of 6 shows in Colorado at random theaters all around. We did all the little towns around Denver, which was really, really good fun. Yeah. And but no, Colorado, I think, is going to be my kind of more relaxed area now. And then I'll hopefully come back to San Antonio.
That's where you go to relax and
yeah, and I'm
re-energize.
Exactly, and just kind of think about other things. But and then hopefully back and forward from San Antonio in the future to see what's in the future for me.
I was kind of disappointed to hear that San Antonio's closed for the moment, because I was thinking through the holidays it'd be fun to come see your show. So keep me posted when you reopen. I'd love to.
We're waiting. We're just waiting for some of the Alamo construction to finish. It's just been unfortunately a real problem for our business. So we are right down there, and that's where the construction is. So we're going to wait a little while, let them figure that out, and get it looking nice. And when it does, we should be able to reopen again, and it should be a lot of fun. So
awesome. Well, Scott, thanks for your time. Any final thoughts?
Well, there was one final thing I was going to tell you, actually, which is the kind of this since talking to you last time and telling my 01 story, and I said I'd applied for my green card.
Yes.
About now 10 days ago, my green card arrived through the mail. I am now a permanent resident of the United States of America.
Awesome. Well, welcome to America officially.
I am super happy. It just came completely out of. I didn't know when it was coming.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it hadn't even been approved last time I spoke to you. Wow. So this has been a really, really massive thing. And I got approved, and then 3 days later it arrived in the mail. So awesome. I've been telling everyone kind of firsthand over the last few days, and we're actually going out tonight to celebrate it. So
nice. Well,
actually, my friends don't even know yet. I haven't told them. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I feel privileged that I got to know before your friends
you got
did.
the inside scoop.
Yeah. Well, we won't air this till after.
I kind of figured,
some days late from now, weeks from now. So your friends will get to know first.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure. I'd love to have you back.
Sure.
Keep me posted, especially if things in San Antonio continue to mature.
I think there's going to be an exciting story unfolding from San Antonio. Yeah. So hopefully, I'll have lots more to talk to you about in 2025.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.